The integrated cover system at Muskrat Falls isn't what it was supposed to be. The structure, also known as the dome, was designed to cover the 4 powerhouse units during construction. But a major section has been torn down before it was even completed. Now, Desmond Sullivan has some serious concerns. He runs a blog called Uncle Gnarly that focuses on political issues throughout the province, and his latest post looks at the dome. This morning we have Desmond Sullivan on the line. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Bailey.
So your post is called The Photos Nalcor Doesn't Want You to See, and I wonder, could you describe these pictures?
Well, these pictures are essentially various piles of dismantled steel girders, much of the roof structure, various, I think that you call them LIL-shaped girders as well, of varying sizes, all sorts of metal pieces that that interconnect and to keep a building stable. So there's these things are on flatbeds and on the ground. This is virtually brand new steel that was, I guess, fabricated in Quebec not all that long ago, brought down to Muskrat, and is now considered scrap. Of course, some of it was put up. It's largely been taken down, and so what you see out in the recycling scrapyard today is quite a lot of money.
Okay, how did you come to be in possession of these photos?
I am in contact with some individuals in the Happy Valley Goose Bay area all the time, and there have been a group of people in St. John's, in Happy Valley Goose, and so on, who have monitored many aspects of the Muskrat Falls project. Continue to comment on it. We are deeply concerned of what Nalcor is doing and the long-term impact on the finances of the province, and the people who furnished me those photographs are trying to, as best they can, keep an eye on a very unwise project.
So have you been able to verify the photos? Do you know for certain what you're looking at?
I have great confidence in the people who furnished me those photographs.
Okay, well, what was your reaction when you saw them? How much steel are we talking about, by the way?
There were, in the complete structure, 3,800 tons of steel was the planned tonnage as estimated by Nalcor. So if we're talking about half the building coming down, 1,900 tons of steel, that's a lot of steel. And for me, we have tried to, over the years, various people who have commented on Muskrat Falls have tried to convey to the public that Nalcor was not ready to do a project of this magnitude. And this is really one of the, one of the first, I guess, photographic manifestations, if you will, of Nalcor's amateurishness.
So what is it that you think these photos say?
Well, I think that, these photos say two things. One, that Nalcor does not have a handle on organization. They have demonstrated that they don't have the experience doing a large project, because they are doing a large project for the first time, and doing, as engineers point out over and over again, if you're doing a project for the first time, you're going to make mistakes, and this is one of Nalcor's big mistakes. Now, this I looked it up on CBC on a CBC story a few minutes ago before it came on, and you will note that the tax increases this year that are in the budget, all the fees and tax increases for the current fiscal year, roughly equal the erection cost of the dome, roughly $120 million. So people can now relate the wastage that's going on Muskrat Falls to what is coming out of their pockets in terms of their taxes and fees and other things. But there's another element here that I want to comment on, if I can, Bailey. There is the waste of the establishment or the construction of a building that is not being used or doesn't get used in order to advance the project and keep it on schedule. But that's only part of the cost. Another huge part of the cost is that the fact that this building did not get finished is that the Muskrat Falls project is now not on schedule.
Okay, well, you brought up the cost a number of times, so I want to make sure I get in a couple of questions about this. And the province brought this up. It was in the question period yesterday. The province also has no issue with the decision made by Estaldi along with Nalcor. Nalcor says they have no issue. The province says they have no issue with the decision made by Estaldi to tear down part of the dome. And we do have a clip of Minister Derek Daly, the Minister of Natural Resources. Here's what he said yesterday.
The decision of the dome was Staldy's, Mr. Speaker, tried to advance production in the building of Muskrat Falls. They built half the dome, Mr. Speaker, and then they decided to not build the other half and pick up in other ways in terms of productivity.
Order, please.
Mr. Speaker. So that was the decision, Mr. Speaker. But as I said at that time, there's no additional cost to taxpayers. That's the cost of Staldy, Mr. Speaker. So there's no additional cost. They've built half to use for half the powerhouse, Mr. Speaker. The other work's going to be done in the spring and the summer in hopes of adding additional batch plants to pour more cement. So that's their approach, Mr. Speaker, but no additional cost to the project and no additional cost to ratepayers.
So that's Derek Daly, the Minister of Natural Resources, and he's saying there that there's no additional cost to the taxpayers. What do you make of that?
No additional cost to the taxpayer. I mean, think of the words here, Bailey. The Nalcor was given the budget, presumably $120 million in the first instance to build this thing. Now, if Estaldi didn't need the entire 4 units of this ICS system, then it means that half the money was wasted. It's still taxpayers' money that ought never to have been spent in the first place. So to say there's no additional cost to the taxpayers, we are supposed to suck up the idea that it's okay to waste $60 million. But hey, there's no additional cost, so it's all right. This is typical Derek Daly nonsense.
Now, this was never intended to be a permanent structure. It was going to come down at some point anyway. So if the job can get done, the structure was always going to come down. There is no additional losses. What is the overall issue?
It doesn't work that way, Bailey, to be quite blunt about it. When a project goes behind schedule, it doesn't mean that all the labor and other costs are not continuing at the same time. If you want to, and I should add that it is very difficult on a large project like this to make up the schedule. Now, if you do so, you've still got to bring in all the additional teams and mobilize all the additional equipment and so on in order to bring the schedule back on track. That's all an additional cost, and that's the other point I wanted to make here. This is not just about the $60 million that Nalcor has wasted building something that they didn't need or didn't use. It is the fact that their own management incompetence has allowed this project to go behind such that there's major additional costs now to be borne trying to get this project back on stream.
Well, but if all of the work can be done with half of the dome or however much, and it's the same work is going to be done whether it's covered or not, how much of a delay is that? We don't know the answer to that.
We don't know, and Nalcor has never been forthcoming with this kind of information. Don't forget that we are taking Nalcor's original estimate of $120 million. We don't know if Nalcor went over budget, which they usually do on most of those contracts. We don't know what the
wouldn't it be Estaldi going over budget?
We don't know either the cost of having dismantled this thing and shipping it off. You can bet your bottom dollar that we're talking a lot more than $120 million. But I want to read from you on page 17 of Nalcor's own oversight committee, the one that I deride quite frequently because I have never ever, and nor does anyone else, view it as independent. This decision to not complete ICS Units 3 and 4 will impact the scheduled progress on the powerhouse and intake over the coming winter. Well, this is an admission, right? This is an admission that that the failure to complete the dome has put this project off schedule. And putting a project off schedule means, on a project this size, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for this morning. Desmond Sullivan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Desmond Sullivan is a political blogger, and you can check out his work at unclegnarly.blogspot.ca. And we did reach out to Nalcor about this issue. It says that Astaldi is the main contractor, so Astaldi makes the decisions regarding the integrated cover system. Astaldi would not do an interview, but we did have this email response, quote, "The majority of the steel frame of Units 3 and 4 of the integrated cover system was taken down over the past several weeks and sold to a local metal recycling company. Astaldi Canada made the decision not to proceed with finishing Units 3 and 4 back in December of 2014 and therefore had no use for the frame. We are still utilizing the cover system over Units 1 and 2 along with the installed overhead cranes. The ICS was always meant to be a temporary structure, and we will continue to use the ICS over Units 1 and 2 until the time comes to dismantle that section as well." So there you go. That's the comment from Astaldi there.